I'm trying to keep up with all the discussions on climate change lately. It's important to always be informed. The new renewable energy sources they are trying out, especially nuclear energy, are considered a potential option for reducing our carbon footprint. Solar and wind power, for instance, are cleaner and more sustainable energy sources. Although the initial costs are high, in the long run, investing in renewable energy can create jobs and stimulate economic growth. Natural phenomena on the planet may become less extreme. Recent advancements in energy storage address the irregularity issue of renewable energy sources. Batteries and other storage solutions are becoming more efficient and will provide a reliable backup during periods of low renewable energy generation. We can't ignore that the continued use of fossil fuels will exacerbate climate change. Regarding developing nations, we can focus on providing support and incentives for them to transition directly to cleaner technologies, bypassing the polluting phase of industrialization. Finding sustainable solutions to combat climate change is not about one solution, but a combination of efforts, from individual actions to international collaborations. Behavioral changes have the potential of being faster and widespread. This is difficult, yet important to reduce greenhouse emissions. To start with, it's better to incorporate learning about climate change into your everyday routine. For example, you can listen to a podcast on your way to work or when you're cooking. You can also consider using a reusable coffee cup instead of a disposable one, or have a reusable shopping bag stashed in your usual grocery bag. You should also consider unplugging your electronic devices when not in use. You can even like climate action content on social media. This can keep you informed and help spread the word by impacting the algorithm. You can take some high-impact personal actions to substantially reduce your annual emissions. A substantial action could be avoiding airplane travel. A round-trip transatlantic flight contributes around 1.6 tons of CO2 equivalent emissions. Another option is adopting a plant-based diet. It's been shown to save about 0.8 tons of CO2 emissions per year. Of course, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. However, these high-impact actions have proven to be more effective than other commonly recommended strategies. For example, comprehensive recycling is only 1/4 as effective as adopting a plant-based diet, and changing household light bulbs is 8 times less effective. In regard to responsibility, governments have a major responsibility to address climate change. This requires updates to international and national legislation and increased opportunities and investment in research and development to tackle the crisis. If you think regulatory action is needed, use your power to influence the politicians representing you. You can join climate marches, sign online petitions, join the EU Climate Pact, and make informed choices at the ballot box. Your influence on society is bigger than you think. You can persuade your parents to change their habits or a company you work with to listen to you. Even installing solar panels in your home can encourage your neighbors to do so. Remember, in our world, most things you buy, from food, clothes, and energy for your home to your mobile phone contract, are connected to global supply chains and big companies. What you choose to buy or not influences the choices these big companies make. Even though non-EU countries are responsible for most emissions, Europe still has plenty of polluting activities, despite its share of global emissions decreasing over time. We still have a long way to go towards climate neutrality by 2050. The EU emits 7% of the global total of carbon emissions each year, which is a considerable amount. And Europe is at the forefront of global climate action. It engages in climate diplomacy at UN COP climate change conferences and has set ambitious goals for the future. It is challenging, but Europe stands ready to lead this process. Taking climate action presents an opportunity to address aspects related to personal health, home, and future, as well as the well-being of important individuals and locations. Also, a problem is that some areas that have not contributed to the development of climate change will be negatively affected. It's also a generational problem. It will affect humans in the future. Becoming a climate pact ambassador and raising these points can give voice to many of these concerns.
I've been busy lately. I don't have time to read about or engage in climate issues, and I haven't been paying much attention to updates. However, it's hard to ignore them. But I believe that the transition to renewable energy can be expensive and may have economic repercussions. Some argue it's not feasible for every country, especially developing nations. I'm not against it, but there are concerns about the irregularity of renewable energy sources. What about when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing? We need reliable energy, and currently, this often means relying on fossil fuels. What about the developing nations that are still heavily dependent on fossil fuels for their economic development? They need access to affordable energy. It's a complex issue, is that national policies and major energy transformations often take decades to change locked-in infrastructure and institutions. I find it difficult to keep up with all the information, engage with climate issues, and be an advocate for them as well. Couldn't I just read a book about climate change and be done with it? I'm sure there are other everyday actions I could take. I've heard of people buying secondhand clothes to reduce the demand for new ones. Another fact is that having one fewer child can significantly reduce carbon emissions, about 58.6 tons per year for developed countries. The numbers are compelling. About avoiding airplane travel, I don't think you can avoid flying altogether. I live on an island. Sometimes it's necessary. And for those who don't have alternative transportation like me, it becomes a challenging trade-off. Also, a plant-based diet is not feasible for everyone. Some people have dietary restrictions, and others may not have access to affordable plant-based solutions. Plus, it's a significant lifestyle change. I think it's mainly a governmental responsibility to make changes. Regulatory action is needed. I don't think I can be that influential to others, especially in convincing people who don't know me. And to be honest, listening to all these required changes makes me think that maybe I don't want to change my personal lifestyle because it wouldn't have a huge impact on the big companies that are responsible for most emissions. I don't think that climate action coming from EU businesses and citizens alone will have a significant impact on a global scale because other countries that are responsible for most emissions follow different regulations and have not made environmental commitments. I read that the EU generates over 2.6 million tons of carbon emissions each year. That's not a lot compared to China, which emits 10.4 million, and the US with 5.1 million. The challenge lies in the EU fully implementing and strengthening its ambitious goals. I don't think this will affect me at the moment. Developed countries are equipped to deal with the consequences. I have a lot to think about. We need a multifaceted approach to address these challenges. Anyway, I'm glad I got to discuss this. Now I'm off to a cycling trip with friends. See you soon.